Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching the Political Vigilante. This is the People's Channel. You guys come here for the truth. One of the things I like doing on this show is seeing whatever the crazy distraction of the day or the week is, and what it's truly distracting us from. So there's a new military budget being introduced. The current budget is 858 billion. The new one is 886 billion that's being proposed, but they're trying to attach, I think the Republicans are trying to attach like some anti-trans stuff to it or whatever. So that's the only thing that's going to make it a fight, but normally that gets passed with bipartisan. So 886 billion is the new proposed budget for 2024, right? 800, and they'll decide on it in the next couple of months, right? By December of 23, they'll have the 24 budget. Last year it was 858 billion, which is atrocious. So anytime something crazy is in the news, I was like, what's going on? Like, what are they? Usually either there's some Epstein thing they're covering up, like whatever, or there's more war stuff. So the most ridiculous thing now that this came out of interest today. So the movie Barbie just opened. It's a big summer blockbuster. And this was in Yahoo News. This is like all over the news today. Was this alarming story? Is Barbie a Chinese communist sympathizer? Oh my Lord. What are they saying? A movie about plastic dolls, not nuclear weapons, has caused political uproar among some conservatives over its depiction of a dashed line off the coast of a childlike drawing of Asia, markings that somewhat resemble territorial border claims by China in the South China Sea. Which is hilarious. Outside of the Barbie world, the horseshoe-shaped 9-dash line has been used by the Chinese government since the 40s as a claim of up to 85% of the South China Sea. The film, well, why maybe just a Barbie map in Barbie world. The fact that a cartoonish, crayon-scribbled map seems to go out of its way to depict the People's Republic of China's unlawful territorial claims demonstrates the pressure that Hollywood is under to please the CCC censors. Now, that's a true thing. We'll get into that with our guest. Oh, that is a thing. Many countries bordering the South China Sea. Right. Okay. So this is the nonsense, and it's all on the Twitter and the internet, and it's, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Is Barbie a commie? And then this gets everybody to go on the internet and waste their time and ours. So to discuss this further is the host of Get Your News On with Ron Placone.
Hey Graham, what's up, buddy? Doing
it. Is Barbie a commie? I mean, what do we do, Ron?
You know what? I thought at first, I was like, I don't think that's true. I don't think Barbie's a communist. But then, you know what? I bought a Ken doll recently. The cock is a hammer and sickle. So they're really doing this. They're committed.
Well, then I would buy a Ken doll. If that's what his dick was, you pull it down,
right?
It's just a hammer and sickle.
Right? That's what they're doing. I saw that headline and I was just like, wow, everything that's going on in the world. This is this is where you invested some chips, huh? Good job.
No, you had a great tweet. It was something like, we're on the brink of World War III with Russia. We're having climate collapse. It's the hottest the Earth has ever been. People
there's flooding. There's freaking
but
historic strike.
Is Barbie a red? That's the real concern.
It's so ridiculous.
It's so funny on a lot of levels. So obviously they're trying to introduce a new military budget, which would be $886 billion, which again, if we were to cut our military budget in half to 440 or whatever, we would still be outspending China by over $200 billion a year. Their military budget is roughly around $200 billion a year. And so we need this anti-China hysteria and anti-Russia hysteria to justify these crazy military budgets. But just to show you, before we get how ridiculous this is, one of the reasons this is a thing with Hollywood that you might not be aware of, is to get distribution into China. And China has, like America has roughly 3,000 movie theaters, right? Screens, if you add up all the screens, right? China has something like 10 to 20,000 screens because they're 1.5 billion people. We're only 330 million people. So this started about 10 years ago in Hollywood, that if you wanted to get Chinese distribution, you can't say anything negative about China. You have to say positive things about China. And then you need to have like at least 1 or 2 Chinese actors. And so you see it like in these Marvel movies or whatever, like the Chinese government comes in and helps fight, Hydra or whatever, or the Chinese government is always depicted in a very positive light. And because Hollywood is a business and doesn't care about anything. So all Hollywood cares about, you could go on and on with it. There was a player in the NBA who put free Tibet on his shoes, and he got in trouble. So this is what China does: is they flex their muscle economically, and America flexes its muscles militarily. So this is a thing that Hollywood does, but it's also every major business, has manufacturing in China. Every major American company has manufacturing in China. So it's hilarious to me. And it also then begs the question of, if it's when I hear the media try to make China out to be this evil empire that's going to try to attack our shores, it's like, why would China attack 300 million of its best customers? Not to mention China's Silk and Road initiative is really, China's just been buying everybody's favor. So this article doesn't even go into those sort of nuances of dealing with the geopolitical thing in terms of the economics, big business, and China. Every American company has to do business with China. Every single one, just about. So when we do this posturing as China's the bad guy, and I'm not excusing anything negative China's done, but obviously you and I have talked about this at great length on both of our shows, is that America is the evil empire. So you see a headline like this and you're like, well, this isn't even going to scratch the surface to the realities of the business that we have with China. The fact that China owns the majority of our debt, and if they call in that debt, it's over for us. And also the real threat here is, China and Russia have gone off the US dollar. They're part of the BRICS countries, right? Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, and other countries, maybe Venezuela, are going to be joining us. They're all going off the dollar. So that's the real threat here, is not that China's going to attack Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
It's that they're going to overtake us economically. And that's, but also then this gets everybody distracted arguing about, is Barbie a commie?
It's just so stupid. That's the thing. It's like you take this thing where it's like, oh, there's the kind of like little minuscule morsel of truth is that, like, oh yeah, you don't see, because they want distribution in China, Hollywood wants, that's a real thing. But then they take it to this absurd cuckoo. Well, and Barbie's a commie. Like, okay, come on. I wish they had a communist Barbie, actually. I wish they had a Barbie. It came with a copy of Das Kapital. That's one of the accessories.
Yeah, and she, like, instead of some like materialistic, Corvette or whatever, she, took public transportation, and she worked at a, socialist coffee shop or whatever. She was she was at a labor rally or whatever, rather than like buying handbags or whatever, just living in.
Her boyfriend is Co-op Ken.
And they met on a municipal broadband dating website.
That's right. They met on a municipal broadband dating website at a town hall meeting.
Yeah, and they just like have a community garden that they feed the low-income people with, and that Barbie, I'd love to see that Barbie.
Yeah.
Again, it shows you how dumb conservatives are. They don't even know what communists and socialism, and they don't, the left, they just like, Joe Biden's a socialist. Like, I wish he was. And this is the socialist communist Hollywood. No, Hollywood is not socialist and communist. Hollywood is neoliberal capitalists. They are.
Well, we're really seeing that now.
Yes.
I mean, holy shit! How anyone could look at what's going on and be like, "Oh, a bunch of commies." Like, are you seeing what's going on? Did you get that quote from the execs where they want all the writers to just starve and lose their homes? Did you see that?
Yes.
Like, they're freaking capitalists. They're capitalists at the core.
And all the executives right now are like up in Vail or something like that, having some retreat, not caring because
so ridiculous.
They're waiting until August 10th. So this is what's the deal with the writer strike. They're not going to do anything until after, because after August 10th, all the big contracts that they've signed with people like Shonda Rhimes, for example, got a $500 million contract with Netflix. And they signed these massive 9-figure deals with writers and people like Shonda Rhimes and Taylor Sheridan, I believe, and other people like that. And they have, under the terms of the contract, they have to deliver so much content. And if they don't by August 10th, then these companies can walk away from these contracts. So that's the real thing with the WGA, is they're just waiting this out until they can purge a couple $2 billion of contracts, because they haven't paid them all out, because the people haven't delivered the content, because they've frozen Hollywood. The show, the streaming services has. So that's the reality. And then, you've got Bob Iger making $30 million a year saying, oh, the actors are being unrealistic or whatever. It's like,
the guy who is the CEO of Disney, which has made billions of dollars making movies about fairies and talking animals, but paying writers a living wage. That's not realistic. That's above the fray. The idea that the thing that people make that generates billions, without the writing, nothing else would happen. It generates billions, and the people who do that getting paid a living wage, that's too much to ask. What do they think? What is realistic to him? They're like, well, what is realistic to you? If this is not a job worth a living wage, what is realistic? What should the writers expect? And why do you get a $40 million salary? Why is that realistic? Yeah. Please explain that to me. It's unbelievable. And I mean, there have been so many. I mean, it's not like this is anything we didn't already know, but it is just, it's just even uglier than we realize. Like the caricature of the Hollywood mogul who's just clueless and doesn't have a creative bone in their body. That's too generous. I mean, that's accurate, but it's too generous. It's more malicious than that. Not only are they clueless and don't have a creative bone in their body, they have pure disdain for anyone who does. So it's even more malicious than that. I mean, wow. And they're going to let it all. I mean, dude, and we've talked about this in various capacities. I mean, look, I tell people, Hollywood as a concept, as we know it, here in Los Angeles, has existed for about 100 years. That's a pretty long run. That could be the end of the run. And I'm like, look, if you would have went up to someone in 1973 in Detroit, who was part of the big music scene there, and said, hey, at the end of the decade, it's all going to be over, they would have laughed right in your freaking face. And then at the end of the decade, they would have been like, holy shit, how did you know that? If you would have went to someone in the Lower East Side, New York City, from the 20s to the 40s and say, hey, all this indie theater stuff, especially these anti-capitalist sentiments, you guys are going to get plowed through by a bunch of corporate overlords. They'd be like, nah, dude, this is always going to be our space. Nope. So the idea that Hollywood can go bye-bye, and in this case, it's like, I mean, both those other things I described were good things, I mean, there were some bad elements too, like anything else in the world, but for the most part, they were good things, like the music scene in Detroit in the 70s. But even still, the idea that Hollywood as we know it can't go bye-bye is just not, I mean, it definitely can. And it might. I mean, it literally might. Where it's like, this might not be a thing anymore, at least not the way it was.
So even, you've talked about artistic scenes and businesses that are going under, but big corporations and big industries have gone completely under, through arrogance. I mean, and look, the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA, there's fair criticism to be made on their negotiating team and their tactics, and they're going up against big business people who are better negotiators and better strategists, and all they care about is money. But you bring up a great, I was talking to someone who's a big production manager, and they're just like, Graham, you know, these studios, and they're going to wait you out, and they, you know, they have better negotiators, and they know what they're doing, and what they, you know, this person was pretty critical of like Fran Drescher and the WGA. And look, the last WGA strike in 2007, 2008, the WGA, in my opinion, they settled for a really bad deal, and that's one of the reasons why they're there today. But even with all of that, and hey, I'm in SAG-AFTRA, so I hope we get everything we want. And I got friends in the WGA, and I hope they get everything they want. You bring up a really good point. Is the CEOs of all these companies and these tech companies are so, like all wealthy people, are woefully out of touch, and they think this show business strike, they think it's 2007 again or 2008 again, and they don't realize there is a massive labor movement going on in this country that really started before COVID in 2018 and 2019, when the teachers unions and all those red states went on strike, and most of them got what they wanted. And there is like the 300 Starbucks that have been unionized nationwide. This is all part of it. We've talked about this. All of this labor stuff and regular American workers are starting to realize, because in the past show business strikes, I can remember regular Americans being like, oh, you crybaby Hollywood people, shut up. I'm not hearing that as much now, because they're like, oh no.
Man, I wish I was in the same space as you. I've actually, oh man, I hope you're more correct than I am, because I've actually been very disappointed to see the opposite, where there's sort of like this disdain for the creative class, even amidst some so-called allies. I think overall there's more of what you're talking about than what I'm talking about, but even still, the amount of it I've seen has been surprising and discouraging, where they, you know, like certain pockets of like so-called allies, even on the left, they don't consider creatives part of the working class. They don't consider, you know, like they have just pure disdain for the writers and for the Actors Guild and stuff like that, because they kind of associate everything with the studio execs, as stuff, which is absolutely ridiculous. Or they point out stuff that they don't like and be like, well, maybe if you didn't make blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, that's like the equivalent of saying all journalists are Chuck Todd. Like, oh well, look at those big Marvel movies or something. They're all stupid, blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, that's like saying like journalism sucks because look at Chuck Todd, or look at, you know, like whoever. You're gonna just lump everybody doing that craft in the same thing. Like, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I've been very disappointed in the amount of the sort of, oh, you're creative for a job, you're not part of the working class. That is not a message of solidarity. It is not accurate. And it's honestly like very chauvinistic and backwards. And it's one of the elements of fascism. When you have a true disdain for the arts, that's one of the elements of fascism, because the arts are one of the things that break through shitty ideas.
Yeah, and the arts, if they're done the right way, should be calling out the powerful. They should be right. Well, it's interesting. I haven't really seen much of that online. So it just shows you how fractured the internet is. If there's more people doing what you're witnessing, well, then Bob Iger's got nothing to worry about, because then everyone will fight with each other, and that's how the ruling classes always stayed in power, is they get everybody to fight with each other.
I hope that what I'm seeing is just a small but loud minority, but I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean,
that's my point.
Yeah.
If it is a small minority, so what I'm saying is, if it's a majority, well, then they'll keep us divided in the same way. Like 3 years ago, everyone was doing George Floyd, and then, you know, the Milwaukee Bucks went on strike in the middle of the playoffs, and Obama talked them to go back into playing, and everyone will go back to sleep. So that could happen. That could easily happen, because Americans are very easily can go back to sleep very easily. The one thing that's different is inflation is through the roof. People can't pay their bills. And now that people are on strike, BlackRock is deliberately, and companies like BlackRock are deliberately buying houses 25, 30% above value. They're pricing out people who have finally saved up money to get a house, which is the American dream. That used to be the thing that built, we had a thriving middle class in America because of mainly home ownership. That created intergenerational wealth, that created upward mobility in America. And so when people can't pay their bills and they get hungry, they're going to take to the streets. And if we have a housing bubble, we have a commercial real estate bubble, a really big one, because all these businesses, people haven't gone back to work. Even industries that are back, people are still working remotely. I defy you to walk down any city street anywhere in America and not find at least 30 to 60% of the businesses shut down. So if all of these things, this perfect storm is created, then the labor movement is going to get a lot of steam, and Hollywood and all these individual businesses are going to be overrun by millions of Americans going, hey, wait a minute, this is all of our struggle. And so, but you know, if dummies are easily, I mean, look, COVID and the vaccine was such an easy tactic to divide the left. The left is all fractured and fighting and stupid, and it's affected you and I and our business and our friendships and relationships. As a result, people are such suckers to easily take the bait and pick a side and be fighty, stupid, dumb Americans, which is why America is a dumb place full of morons. So it's really, we'll see. The ruling elites.
That's what you see at Ellis Island now.
Yeah.
I mean, when the boat comes in, it just says "dumb place full of morons."
Dumb place full of morons.
They no
Good
longer.
Luck.
Yeah, that's what it should say.
And then they just stamp thoughts and prayers into your passport and go and send you on your way. So it'll be interesting to see if people realize, if all Americans or the majority of Americans realize that, you know, UPS's labor issues are the same as an actor or writer in Hollywood's labor issues, and Hollywood needs to. I think Hollywood needs to wake up and go, hey, we're only going to go to Starbucks that have been unionized in LA and New York. We're going to support the Amazon worker strike. We're going to support UPS. We're going to use the post office more in solidarity with UPS. We won't cross UP because they'll get scab drivers probably. So all of these unions and all of these people and all of these different factions of America need to come together. And that's how you will get the labor that you want, the negotiations and contracts that you want. If everybody fights with each other and says creatives are stupid and who UPS is dumb anyway and complains like dumb, selfish, fat-headed Americans, then the ruling elites will continue to thrive. And while Americans are fighting over a can of rotten tuna fish.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I hope there's, you know, more of what, you know, you were earlier referring to than what I've seen, you know, and I feel like there has been some encouraging things. I mean, the Teamsters aren't crossing the picket line for the WGA. Like there has been a lot of cross-pollination, which is really, really encouraging. And I just think that, I don't know. I mean, I'm worried that this is going to go on for a long time. And I'm worried that they're really going to be able to kind of knuckle the writers and SAG into a shitty deal, because they're going to just find so many just loopholes, you know, foreign content, reality TV. They have such a long runway of content, and I think they're just going to milk that for all it's worth, to the point where they're kind of going to be like, well, what choice do you have? I mean, that's my fear. I hope I'm wrong, and I might be, but that's like my biggest fear. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, some people that thing, but a lot of, it's funny. I saw some writers online saying, you think you can wait after that quote came out of, we want you to lose your homes and your apartments or whatever. Several writers were like, hey, because you guys have been paying us shitty wages, we all have side gigs, so we can just keep doing our side gigs and strike and not write for you. So, and 95% of SAG-AFTRA doesn't make enough to pay their bills. So most members of SAG-AFTRA have side gigs anyway. So everyone's like, yeah, I'll just go to walk the strike line and then, you know, do my side gig and until we get a better deal. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, the ruling elites will if it gets tough for them, they've got all this, like you say, they've got foreign content. They can do documentaries and reality TV, which isn't anyone, no one's crossing picket lines. They can do all this stuff. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they're very good at divide and conquer. If they're effective at that, if people stay steadfast and get the word out. I mean, that's the thing that's different.
Well, how long do you think this thing's going to last? Like, what's your guess? I know we're just speculating here, but
I think you're talking about a minimum of 3 months. The SAG strike, a minimum of 3 months.
Okay.
If not 6.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm kind
on top of we're already in 2 months of WGA has been striking since May. So I think this doesn't get resolved till the end of the year. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love it to get resolved and everybody gets a great contract, but
I'm kind of thinking that too, actually. I mean, and it's just so looking at it big picture. And I know we kind of like, you know, like these, we started with Barbie and we got here, but they are connected. So, the craziest thing to think about, you know, I met a younger comic at a show recently. And, you know, it was just sort of one of those conversations. Oh, how long have you been in LA and that sort of thing? And he said, like, he showed up in 2020. And I kind of thought about it. It's like, if you came to Los Angeles in 2020, you have only had about a year of an almost fully functioning industry. And that's so, I mean, it's between, you know, the pandemic. And that's what makes this even all the more frustrating. This is a self-inflicted wound. This is not as by the studios and the execs, obviously. Like, this has nothing to do, like this is greed. This is just pure greed by the studios, by the executives. It should have never come to this point. Everything the writers are asking for, they shouldn't even have to ask for. Everything SAG is asking for, they shouldn't even have to ask for. This is just pure greed, lack of foresight that even got us to this point. And that not only would this ever happen, but that this would happen now, where you're just starting to recover from a shut down world. And actually, like, you know, film sets in Hollywood were actually being pretty responsible. Even they were kind of setting they were kind of setting an example of what you should do for your workers when other companies, the Amazons of the world, just told their workers, go pound sand. If you get sick, we don't give a shit. You know, they were saying, like, no, we're going to have organized testing. We're going to make sure everyone stays healthy. You know, like we're going to make sure you're healthy, and we're going to do it on our time and on our dime, not you, the worker, you know, like we, the studio. They were actually doing it right. And then to just burn it all down. It's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you?
It's abject greed. They're just trying to get out of these contracts. They're trying to crush the unions. They're trying to, you know, just buy foreign content. And so we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see. But in the meantime, Ron, you and I can tell stand-up comedy jokes.
We can still do live shows. We can still do live shows.
So support live comedy, you know, come out July 27th at the Crow in Santa Monica. We're doing our band in Florida because Governor Rick Scott said he didn't want communists and socialists coming to Florida. So we're making a show. We're not allowed there. So we're going to do a show in LA. I'd love to do a show in Florida. If there's a club in Florida that wants to have us, I want to do a show in Florida, and we hand out copies of Karl Marx at the show.
You know what would be funny is if they move all the infrastructure of Hollywood to Florida, and then you and I have to move to Florida after. And be like, oh, can we come in though? We kind of have to.
Yeah, sorry, bro. They need us here.
I think I would stay here. I'd be like, nah, I'll figure it out here.
I'll be living in El Salvador.
There you go. No, that's the one sort of potential silver lining. I was just like, you know what? If the industry is completely fractured and there's no return, what if like a bunch of people just got together and one of those like, hey, this is bringing it to uni broadband. You go to one of those like wired cities that wants remote workers there, either in the United States or abroad, and you just kind of like take it over. Just get like a bunch of creatives and just sort of take it over and make stuff and just live.
Well,
I could do that. I get used to that.
We'll talk more privately, but I'm working on something like that in El Salvador. So it's there's interesting stuff happening down there with their government and Bitcoin and everything. But come out July 27th to the Band in Florida show. Myself, Ron Placone, James Adomian, Mona Sheikh will all be there. It's at the Crow, this club in Bergamot Station in Santa Monica. It's got free parking, and it's right off the Expo line light rail. So it is the easiest venue to get to. And tickets are at grahamelwood.com. And of course, I'm headlining in San Diego August 3rd. So if you're in the San Diego area, please come out to that show. Go to grahamelwood.com for all of your tickets. Sign up for my newsletter. You get a free vegan smoothie recipe. And I'll be giving you more updates. I've dropped a bunch of videos from when I was just in El Salvador. I'll be dropping more. And then Ron Placone, you've got some shows coming up. You're going to Edinburgh.
Going to Edinburgh, man. August 16th through 27th. I'll be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Can't wait. If you're in Edinburgh or going to the Fringe, come check out my show. And October 21st, I'm going to be in my neighborhood, San Pedro, California, right on the harbor there in Los Angeles. Tickets and all information at ronplacone.com.
Right on. Ron, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like, share, subscribe, follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth, and shave your knuckles for justice. Boom.